My stepdad said, "I'm here to protect you." The day I found cameras hidden in my bedroom connected to a server in his office. I was 17 when I discovered the first camera hidden inside the smoke detector above my bed. It was a Saturday morning in late October, and I had climbed onto my desk chair to replace the battery after the low chirp had been driving me insane for 2 days. When I twisted the white plastic cover off, I expected to see the standard 9-volt compartment and sensor mechanism. Instead, I found a tiny lens no bigger than a pinhead embedded in the corner, connected to wiring that had nothing to do with smoke detection. My hands started shaking so badly I nearly fell off the chair. The device was professionally installed, with custom mounting that matched the detector's original housing perfectly. Someone had gone to serious effort to make this look legitimate. I unscrewed the entire unit from the ceiling and carried it downstairs, my heart pounding so hard I could hear blood rushing in my ears. Mom was at her Saturday spin class, and my younger sister Kayla was at soccer practice. The house felt enormous and empty as I walked through the hallway, holding the dismantled smoke detector like evidence in a crime I did not yet understand. Derek, my stepdad, was in his home office with the door partially open, and I could hear him typing on his keyboard with the rapid, confident rhythm he used when working on his security consulting projects. He had married my mom 3 years earlier, 6 months after my biological father died from a sudden heart attack that left our family financially devastated and emotionally shattered. Derek had seemed perfect at first, patient, generous, interested in our lives without being pushy. He paid for my sister's travel soccer league, helped me prep for the S8s, took us on vacations to places we had only seen in magazines. Mom had been so relieved to have stability again after 2 years of working double shifts and barely keeping our house. I knocked on the office door frame, and Derek looked up from his triple monitor setup with the warm smile that had made me trust him completely for 3 years. "Hey, buddy. What's up?" His eyes flickered to the smoke detector in my hands, and something changed in his expression. Not panic or guilt, but calculation. Like he was rapidly processing options and selecting the best response. "I found this in my smoke detector," I said, holding it up so he could see the exposed camera lens. "Can you explain why there's a camera hidden in my bedroom?" My voice sounded steadier than I felt, but my hands were still trembling. Derek stood up slowly, his 6'2" frame suddenly seeming more intimidating than protective. He walked around his desk and closed the office door behind me, which made my stomach drop. "Let's talk about this calmly," he said in the same reasonable tone he used when mediating arguments between Kayla and me. "I installed security cameras throughout the house after that break-in attempt last year. You remember how scared your mom was? I wanted everyone to feel safe." The explanation sounded plausible on the surface, but something about his delivery felt rehearsed, like he had been preparing for this conversation and already knew exactly what to say. I looked at the smoke detector again, at the professional installation and concealed wiring. "This isn't a security camera. It's hidden. Why would you hide a security camera in my bedroom?" Derek's expression shifted to concern, but it felt performative rather than genuine. "The psychological research shows that visible cameras can create anxiety in teenagers. I wanted to monitor for safety without making you feel surveilled. It's about protection, not invasion." He reached for the smoke detector, but I pulled it back. "There was another attempted break-in 3 weeks ago that I didn't tell your mom about because I didn't want to worry her. The guy was checking windows on the second floor. Your room, specifically." The claim felt fabricated, designed to justify the unjustifiable. I had heard nothing about any break-in attempt, and our neighborhood was one of the safest in the county. "If there was a break-in attempt, why wouldn't you tell us? Why wouldn't you call the police?" Derek's jaw tightened slightly, the first crack in his calm facade. "I handled it privately. That's what I do. I'm a security consultant. I assess threats and neutralize them before they become problems." His tone had shifted from reasonable to authoritative, trying to establish dominance over the conversation. "Show me the footage from this camera," I said, surprised by how steady my voice had become despite the fear crawling up my spine. "If it's just for security, show me what it recorded." Derek's eyes went cold in a way I had never seen before. The warm, protective stepdad vanished completely, replaced by someone calculating and controlled. "That's not how this works. The footage is encrypted and stored on secure servers for insurance purposes. I can't just access it casually." The explanation made no sense. If the cameras were for our protection, we should be able to access the footage, unless protection was never the point. I thought about every time I had changed clothes in my room, every private moment I had assumed was actually private. The violation felt so profound that I could not fully process it. My brain kept trying to find innocent explanations, alternative interpretations that would preserve the version of Derek I had believed in. But the camera was real, the concealment was deliberate, and his explanations were falling apart under the smallest scrutiny. "I'm telling Mom," I said, moving toward the door. Derek stepped in front of me, blocking my path without touching me. "Let's think about this carefully. Your mom has been through hell since your dad died. She's finally happy again, stable. Do you really want to destroy that over a cow? Misunderstanding about home security?" The manipulation was blatant now, trying to make me responsible for my own silence, trying to weaponize my love for my mom against my instinct to expose what I had found. "If you tell her about this, she'll spiral. You know how fragile she still is. And what exactly are you going to tell her? That you found a security camera and jumped to the worst possible conclusion? He was good at this, I realized, twisting reality so that my reasonable response seemed irrational, making the victim feel responsible for the abuser's actions. I had read about gaslighting in psychology class, but experiencing it was different from understanding it theoretically. Move, I said quietly. Derek studied my face for a long moment, then stepped aside with a slight smile that made my skin crawl. We'll talk about this later, when you've calmed down. I went straight to Kayla's room and checked her smoke detector. Same modification, same hidden camera, same professional installation. My 13-year-old sister had been unknowingly recorded in her bedroom for God knows how long, and the violation felt even worse because she was younger, more vulnerable. I took photos of both smoke detectors with my phone, documenting the camera lenses and concealed wiring. Then I started systematically checking every smoke detector in the house. Living room, kitchen, hallway, bathrooms, all legitimate. Only the bedrooms had been modified. Only the private spaces where people changed clothes and expected privacy. This was not about home security. This was targeted surveillance of specific family members in their most vulnerable moments. I felt physically sick as the full scope of what Derek had done became clear. He had violated us systematically, deliberately, with premeditation and technical sophistication. And he had done it while playing the role of protective father figure, using our trust as camouflage for predatory behavior. Mom came home an hour later, energized from her spin class and talking about brunch plans for the next day. I waited until Kayla got back from soccer practice because I wanted my sister to hear this directly from me rather than from Derek's carefully constructed version. We sat in the living room, the three of us, and I placed both dismantled smoke detectors on the coffee table. Derek installed hidden cameras in our bedrooms, I said simply. Mom's expression went through confusion, disbelief, then defensive rejection. That can't be right. Derek would never do something that invasive. There must be a misunderstanding. She picked up one of the detectors, examining the exposed camera lens with growing alarm. These are for security. He mentioned something about upgrading our home security system last month. She was already making excuses, I realized. Already protecting the man who had violated her children because accepting the truth would mean confronting how catastrophically her judgment had failed. Kayla looked at the cameras with dawning horror. He's been watching us change clothes? Her voice cracked on the last word, and seeing my sister's innocence shatter in real time made me angrier than I had ever been. Mom, these cameras were only in our bedrooms, not in common areas, not by doors or windows, just in private spaces where we expected privacy. I pulled up the photos on my phone, showing the concealed installation and professional wiring. This isn't security equipment, this is surveillance. Mom stood up abruptly, her face flushed. I need to talk to Derek. There's obviously been some kind of miscommunication. He's a security professional. He understands these systems better than we do. She was clinging to denial so desperately that I could see her constructing alternative explanations in real time. Anything to avoid confronting the possibility that she had brought a predator into our home and given him unrestricted access to her children. Derek appeared in the living room doorway right on cue, having obviously been listening to our conversation. I already explained this to your son. The cameras are part of a comprehensive security system designed to protect this family after credible threats. He looked at Mom with perfect concern and sincerity. There was another attempted break-in 3 weeks ago. I didn't want to alarm you, but someone was specifically targeting the second-floor bedrooms. I had to take protective measures. Mom's expression shifted from alarm to relief so quickly it was almost comical. She wanted to believe him, needed to believe him. The alternative was too devastating to accept. Why didn't you tell me about this? She asked Derek, her tone already softening. I could have helped secure the house. We could have called the police. Derek moved closer and took her hand, the perfect image of a concerned husband protecting his family. I'm trained to handle these situations. The police would have filed a report and done nothing. I neutralized the threat privately and installed preventive measures. That's what I do. Bullshit, I said, and Mom flinched at my language. If there was a real threat, you would have called the police. You would have told us so we could be alert. Instead, you secretly installed hidden cameras in our bedrooms and encrypted the footage so no one else could access it. That's not protection. That's surveillance. Derek's expression hardened, and I saw the mask slip again. The reasonable, concerned stepfather vanished, replaced by someone cold and calculating. You're 17 years old with no understanding of actual security protocols. I don't need to justify my professional decisions to a kid who found something he doesn't understand and immediately jumped to pornographic conclusions. The accusation was designed to make me seem like the problem, to reframe my legitimate concerns as teenage hysteria. Mom looked between us, torn between maternal instinct and her desperate need to preserve the stability Derek represented. I want to see the footage, I said. Right now. If this is really about security, show us the recordings. Prove that you're monitoring for break-ins and not recording us in private moments. Derek's jaw clenched, and for a second I thought he might actually hit me. The footage is stored on encrypted cloud servers with proprietary access. I can't just pull it up on demand. That's not how enterprise security systems work. Every explanation created new questions, new inconsistencies. If the system was truly for our protection, why make it inaccessible to the people it was supposedly protecting? Why hide the cameras instead of installing visible deterrents that would actually prevent crime? Mom was still trying to find middle ground, still trying to believe that both her husband and her son had legitimate perspectives. Maybe we can have a security consultant look at the system? Someone independent who can verify everything is appropriate? Derek's expression turned contemptuous. You want to bring an outsider into our home to examine my professional work because your son found a camera and freaked out? That's insulting. He turned to Mom with wounded dignity. I've given this family everything. Financial stability, security, opportunities you couldn't afford before, and this is how I'm repaid, with accusations and suspicion? The manipulation was textbook, I realized, turning justified questions into betrayals, making himself the victim of ungrateful family members who could not appreciate his sacrifices. Mom was wavering. I could see it. She wanted to believe Derek because the alternative meant admitting she had endangered her children by bringing a predator into their home. That level of self-blame might destroy her completely. I trust Derek, she said finally, and my heart sank. He's been nothing but good to this family. If he says the cameras are for security, then that's what they're for. Kayla stood up abruptly, tears streaming down her face. I don't care what he says they're for. I don't want cameras in my bedroom. I don't want him watching me. She ran upstairs, and I heard her door slam. The sound echoed through the house with devastating finality. Mom looked stricken, torn between her daughter's distress and her husband's explanations. Derek played his final card perfectly. This is exactly why I didn't want to worry you with security details. Now, Kayla is traumatized, not by any actual threat, but by her brother's paranoid interpretation of protective measures. He looked at me with something that might have been pity if it had been genuine. You've scared your little sister because you don't understand the systems I've put in place to keep her safe. Is that what you wanted? The inversion was complete. Somehow, I had become the villain in Derek's narrative, the one causing family discord and childhood trauma. That night, I could not sleep. I kept thinking about the camera lens positioned to record my bed, my desk, my entire bedroom. How long had it been there? What had Derek seen? What had he done with the footage? The violation felt so profound that I could not wrap my mind around it completely. Every private moment over the past months or years had potentially been recorded and stored on servers I could not access. I thought about all the times Derek had commented on things that happened in my room. You stayed up late studying last night. I could hear you moving around. Did you enjoy that video call with your girlfriend? You should clean your room more often. At the time, I had assumed he was being attentive. Now I realized he had been demonstrating his surveillance capabilities, letting me know he was watching without explicitly stating it. The psychological manipulation ran deeper than just the physical cameras. He had been training us to accept his omniscient presence, normalizing the violation until we could not even recognize it as abuse. The next morning, I searched Derek's full name online with keywords I had been too naive to consider before. Derek Anthony Whitmore, security consultant, plus arrested, and charges, and registered offender. The results made my blood run cold. Derek had a sealed juvenile record, but there were newspaper articles from 12 years earlier about a case involving inappropriate surveillance of minors in a previous consulting job. The charges had been dropped due to insufficient evidence and legal technicalities about privacy expectations in workplace environments. But the pattern was there, documented in public records for anyone careful enough to look. He had done this before. He had refined his techniques, learned from mistakes, and found new victims in families vulnerable from loss and financial instability. My mom had been the perfect target. A widow desperate for stability, with 2 children young enough to be molded and controlled. I showed the articles to Kayla first, in her room with the door closed. She read them silently, her face growing paler with each paragraph. Mom won't believe this either, she said quietly. She's going to say the charges were dropped, which means he's innocent. She'll find a way to explain it. Kayla was 13, but understood adult manipulation better than I wanted to acknowledge. We need to get the footage, she continued. If we can prove what he's been recording, Mom will have to believe us. She was right, but accessing Derek's encrypted servers would require skills and knowledge I did not have, unless I could physically access his office computer while he was out of the house. The thought terrified me, but the alternative was living under surveillance until I turned 18 and could move out, leaving Kayla alone with Derek for 5 more years. That was unacceptable. Derek's security consulting work required occasional overnight trips to client sites. According to the calendar Mom kept on the kitchen whiteboard, he had a trip scheduled to Philadelphia for Tuesday through Thursday of the following week. That gave me a 3-day window to access his office computer and find the camera footage. I spent the next week watching Derek's routine, noting when he left his office unlocked, which passwords he used most frequently, how often he checked his security monitors. He was meticulous about digital security, but surprisingly careless about physical security in his own home. The office door locked from the inside but could be easily opened with a butter knife slid through the frame. His computer required a password, but he had it written on a sticky note attached to the underside of his keyboard drawer. The false sense of security that came from believing his family was too intimidated or naive to challenge him had made Derek sloppy. The Tuesday Derek left for Philadelphia, I waited until Mom went to her evening book club and Kayla was doing homework in her room. Then I picked the office door lock with a butter knife, exactly as I had practiced, and sat down at Derek's computer. The password was Sentinel 2019, with an exclamation point, precisely as written on his hidden note. The desktop background was a professional photo of our family at the beach from last summer. Mom, Kayla, Derek, and me, all smiling like we were the perfect blended family. The irony made me nauseous. I opened his file system and started searching for video files or security footage directories. What I found was worse than I had imagined. Organized folders labeled with dates and names. Not just Kayla and me, but files labeled with other names I did not recognize. Emma, bedroom 2018, and Sophie bathroom 2017, and dozens more going back years. The folders contained hundreds of video files, meticulously organized by date, time, and activity. I opened one at random and immediately closed it, bile rising in my throat. These were not security recordings. They were voyeuristic surveillance clips focused on private moments, edited to highlight specific activities. Derek had been systematically recording and cataloging footage of children and teenagers in vulnerable situations, building a personal collection that represented years of predatory behavior across multiple families and locations. Some folders included text files with notes about schedules, habits, and vulnerabilities. Emma showers at 7 a.m., uses bathroom fan, good audio coverage. Sophie changes after dance class, leaves window shade partially open. The clinical documentation of opportunities for surveillance made the crime feel even more calculated and predatory. I found external hard drives in Derek's desk drawer, each labeled with years. 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021. 7 years of archived footage representing God knows how many victims. The scope was overwhelming. This was not a single mistake or a moment of poor judgment. This was a systematic criminal enterprise spanning years and probably multiple states, carefully concealed behind Derek's professional reputation and carefully constructed persona as a protective father figure. I used my phone to photograph every folder name, every directory structure, every piece of evidence I could document in the 30 minutes before Mom would return from book club. Then I copied the most recent files onto a flash drive I had brought specifically for this purpose. The files were too large to email, but I needed portable evidence that could be given to police without requiring access to Derek's computer. The external hard drives were too large to hide on my person, but I photographed their labels and serial numbers, documenting their existence and location in Derek's office. As I was preparing to leave, I noticed a second computer tower partially hidden behind the desk. This one was not connected to any monitors, but had multiple hard drives installed and indicator lights showing active operation. A dedicated server, I realized. The main computer was just an access point. The real storage was happening on this standalone machine, probably with redundant backups to cloud servers and off-site locations. Derek had built an infrastructure specifically designed to preserve and protect his collection from discovery or deletion. The technical sophistication suggested this was not just compulsive behavior, but potentially involved distribution or sharing with other offenders. I left the office exactly as I had found it, closed the door, and went to my room, where I immediately uploaded all the photos and copied files to multiple cloud accounts under fake names. Then I called the non-emergency police number and asked to speak with someone about reporting child exploitation. The operator transferred me to a detective named Lisa Freeman, who listened to my initial explanation without interruption. "I need you to not touch anything else in that office," she said when I finished. "Don't copy more files, don't move equipment. Don't let your stepfather know you've discovered this. Can you and your sister stay somewhere else tonight?" The urgency in her voice confirmed that what I had found was even more serious than I had understood. This was not just family conflict or inappropriate surveillance. This was evidence of federal crimes with potential connections to organized networks of offenders. Detective Freeman arrived at our house 40 minutes later with 2 other officers and a warrant that had been expedited based on my initial report and the evidence photos I had emailed. Mom was furious when she came home to find police vehicles in our driveway and strangers searching Derek's office. "This is insane. You called the police without talking to me first? Do you understand what this will do to our family?" She was still defending Derek even as officers carried out boxes of hard drives and equipment. Detective Freeman took Mom aside and showed her something on a tablet, probably sample footage from Derek's collection. Mom's face went gray, then green, and she sat down heavily on the couch. The defensive denial shattered completely as she confronted evidence too explicit and damning to rationalize away. "Oh God," she whispered. "Oh my God. The girls he mentioned from his consulting jobs, were they all victims?" The investigation moved rapidly once law enforcement accessed Derek's server and cloud storage accounts. The FBI became involved within hours because the evidence showed interstate distribution of exploitative material and potential coordination with other offenders. Derek was arrested at his Philadelphia hotel room before he could delete or move any evidence. The news coverage called it one of the largest cases of systematic child surveillance and exploitation documented in our region. Forensic analysis showed Derek had been creating and distributing material for over 15 years, targeting vulnerable families where he could gain trusted access to children. The security consulting business was partially legitimate, but he specifically sought positions in homes with single mothers and teenage children, using professional credibility to normalize his presence and deflect suspicion. The trial lasted 4 months, and the evidence presented was overwhelming. Testimony from other families Derek had worked with revealed a pattern of boundary violations, hidden cameras, and psychological manipulation spanning multiple states. Expert witnesses explained how Derek had used his technical expertise to build distribution networks and trade material with other offenders. The defense attempted to argue that some surveillance was for legitimate security purposes, but the organization of files, editing of footage, and distribution activities made predatory intent undeniable. Derek showed no remorse throughout the proceedings, maintaining that his actions had been misunderstood and that he had been protecting families from threats they could not comprehend. The delusion or deliberate manipulation continued, even when confronted with irrefutable evidence of his crimes. Victim impact statements from Kayla and me described the psychological damage of learning our privacy had been violated for years by someone who claimed to protect us. Other victims, some now adults, described how Derek's surveillance had affected their development, relationships, and ability to trust authority figures. The cumulative testimony painted a picture of systematic psychological abuse that extended far beyond the physical act of recording. Derek had destroyed the sense of safety and privacy that allows normal development, replacing it with paranoia, shame, and the knowledge that they had been objectified by someone they trusted. The judge called Derek's crimes a profound betrayal of the most fundamental duties of caregiving and protection before sentencing him to 45 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. Mom never recovered from the guilt and self-blame. She had brought Derek into our lives, given him access to her children, and missed or ignored warning signs that should have been obvious. The divorce was finalized while Derek awaited trial, but the damage to our family's sense of security and Mom's mental health was permanent. She went through intensive therapy but continued struggling with depression and anxiety that made normal functioning difficult. Kayla developed severe trust issues and required years of counseling to process the violation and betrayal. I graduated high school a year early and started college studying cybersecurity and digital forensics, determined to understand the technical systems that predators used so I could help identify and prevent similar crimes. The civil lawsuit against Derek's former security consulting firm resulted in a substantial settlement that funded college for both Kayla and me, along with ongoing therapy costs. The firm had failed to conduct adequate background checks and had ignored complaints from previous clients about Derek's boundary violations. Their negligence had enabled his crimes to continue for years across multiple families. The settlement could not undo the violation, but it acknowledged institutional failure and provided resources for recovery. Other families filed additional lawsuits, creating accountability that extended beyond Derek's individual prosecution to the systems that had enabled and protected him. 5 years later, I work with law enforcement agencies developing tools to detect hidden surveillance equipment and identify patterns of digital exploitation. Kayla is studying psychology with a focus on trauma recovery, planning to work with child abuse survivors. Mom manages her mental health with medication and therapy, though holidays and family events remain painful reminders of how completely her judgment failed when it mattered most. Derek writes letters from prison claiming he was persecuted for trying to protect families from dangers they could not understand. None of us read them. The protection he offered was always a lie concealing predatory intent, and his 45-year sentence ensures he will never have access to vulnerable children again. Sometimes protection means recognizing the threat was inside your home all along. If you enjoyed this, you'll definitely want to see the next ones too. So subscribe now and let me know your take in the comments.